This is Perspectivas Latinas, a community service of CAN-TV. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. The Chicago region is a vibrant area with great potential and challenges. One of those challenges is how to best integrate its immigrant population. The Chicago Metropolitan Agency for Planning is helping respond to some of those challenges. Our guests are here to discuss this important work. Welcome to all of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, let's start off by introducing each of you. Our first guest, EIRA, CORRAL. Welcome.
Yes,
and
thank you.
You're actually an elected official here in our state. Tell us about that and about how you came to work with CMAP, please.
Sure, yeah, I represent the municipality of Hanover Park. It's a Northwest community. It's just under 38,000 people. It's a very vibrant community, it's a young community, it's a very diverse community. We are a plurality of Latino residents. We have about 38% Latino, 38% Caucasian. We have about 15% Asian and about 8% African American.
Wow, and why did you decide to run for office?
You know, I had always been very involved in my community. Leadership had been important to me, and when the opportunity arose, it was one of those moments where you said, okay, you know what, do I step in? I decided, yes, you know, that this is something that I'd like to do. And luckily, my community supported me and has elected me now twice.
Wow, that's awesome. Well, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Our next guest, Ricardo Lopez. Welcome again.
Thank you, Juan Carlos. Yeah, again, thank you for inviting us to CAN-TV.
You are actually part of CMAP.
Yes, I am the Latino Outreach Associate. I've been with the organization for about 4 years now, and my main role is working with the many communities in our Chicago metropolitan region to engage members of the community into the planning processes to make better communities. And the CMAP was created in 2005 at the urgent need of local elected officials and business leaders. Prior to 2005, there were two existing organizations, CATS, Chicago Area Transportation Study, and NIPSI, Northeastern Illinois Planning Committee.
I certainly want to get into that, but before we get into the nitty-gritty and details of CMAP, which I do want you to explain to our viewers, I want to introduce our final guest for today. Diana JUAREZ. Welcome.
Yes, thank you. I'm Diana JUAREZ, Director of the Niles Township Schools ELL Parent Center. My center is situated in Skokie, and we serve all of the Niles Township, which includes Skokie, Morton Grove, Niles, and Lincolnwood. And we are really set up, funded by the school districts, to serve parents who have children in public school in those districts. So,
and ELL specifically means?
English language learner. So we are definitely targeting immigrant parents and really providing help so that we can help them help their children do well in school.
Okay, great. So now back to you, Ricardo.
Sure.
I apologize for that interruption, but yeah, tell us about CMAP and what it does, what it exists for, and how it's branching out and working with municipalities and different organizations, please.
Sure. So yeah, CMAP serves as the region's metropolitan planning organization. By federal law, every metropolitan region that has a population of 50,000 people or more is required to have an MPO. CMAP serves as that role. We develop a comprehensive plan for the region called Go to 2040. The last time that our Chicago region had a plan was over 100 years ago, and that was a 1909 plan of Chicago created by Daniel Burnham.
That was Burnham, okay.
And so in 2010, the plan was adopted, and we were fortunate to receive a sustainable community grant by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development to begin implementation of Go to 2040. We developed a program called Local Technical Assistance, where we have been able to provide assistance to local municipalities to develop small study area plans to help them address many of the issues that they're facing in their communities. And one of the efforts that we received, one of the proposals that we received was to develop a step-by-step guidebook toolkit for municipalities to be able to integrate their immigrant community.
Okay, let's talk about that before we get into the guidebook itself. What through the research and work that CMAP has done, what have they found about the immigrant population here in the Chicago region? Because it's It seems to me, from my own research, that it's something that's never, the flow of immigrants to Chicago has never stopped.
Right. So historically, Chicago has been a port of entry for immigrants. There's an abundance of organizations and services that cater to the needs here in Chicago. However, in the last decade and beyond, the number of immigrants coming to our region has been in the suburban area, where there's not the same as Chicago. There's in terms of the resources and the staff capacity. And so when we're talking about Go to 2040, we're talking about the future. And we're seeing that the region is increasingly diversifying. In the last decade, our population, our total population increased by 3.5%. When we looked at the foreign
immigrant population, or the
just the overall
regional,
right? While it increased by 3.5%, the foreign-born population in our region increased by 11.6%.
11.6.
Right.
Wow.
So when we're talking about the future of our communities, it's important that we're understanding the challenges and we're addressing the needs at the local level, so that we can continue to be the strong global economic center that we are as a region.
Right, and talking about region, it is a region very much one culturally, I think, and mentally. I think it all jibes and works as one in a sense, but certainly not as far as government, right? You know, with municipalities dividing up resources or not having perhaps the same amount of agencies or organizations to address these needs for immigrants, right? Am I correct in that analysis?
Yeah, definitely.
And that's how you work, bring in people like EIRA, right?
Right.
Right. We take advantage of CMAP's local technical assistant grants for a variety of topics. Municipalities in the suburban communities are typically smaller. Some can be as small as 2,000, some can be as large as 50,000. Hanover Park, for example, is a little under 38,000. So our capacity is limited. Our staff capacity, our funding, our human resources is limited in what we can do. So CMAP is a great asset to our region because they provide those local technical assistance grants. This one in particular focused on this Immigrant Integration Toolkit. And conceptually, this started with one of the Northwest Municipal Conference, which is a conference of governments, and there are multiple throughout the region. And we needed support, so we reached out to the Diversity Task Force, which is part of the Chicago Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus. And I'm a part of that task force as well, so this really jived very well in partnering, and they went to CMAP and applied for this grant, and they obtained the grant. So this assists municipalities, and one of the things that multiple leaders in municipalities discussed was we would like to take initiatives, we just don't know where to start. We don't know, you know, this is new for a lot of municipalities. It's happened within the last 20 or 10 years that the growth of the immigrant community has happened. So it's structurally not set up to provide human resources. Municipalities typically focus on services, public works, policing, fire department. Human resources are typically left to townships or service organizations. This needs different type of leadership and different strategies. So this is a way to get a foundation to know where to start.
Okay, so CMAP has been instrumental in helping it launch that, helping gather the information, helping, in some sense, coach or guide it. Would I be correct in that analysis, Ricardo?
Yeah. So what we did, the proposal came in from the Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus and the Latino Policy Forum. It was sort of building off previous efforts. The Metropolitan Mayor's Caucus developed a guidebook in 2012. It offered profiles of organizations and a review of immigrant in the Chicago metropolitan region, but it lacked step by step as to how to go about integrating immigrant into the community. They did a survey to municipalities. They surveyed municipalities to learn about what the main constraints were as to immigrant integration. And they learned that two of the main constraints were lack of capacity and lack of funding. So the toolkit, the aim that the approach that we took was to research and learn about local practices that could be of assistance to municipalities given those constraints.
Okay.
Right. For us, from a municipal perspective,
Right.
Each municipality is its own. So what works for one municipality may not necessarily work for the other, but it's good to have those best practices.
Okay.
What this toolkit does is it takes it a step further, and it shows some very basic challenges, some very basic strategies, and it helps you implement something that is appropriate for your community. And
Okay.
it gives you a starting point for your community on where you can move forward, and it also gives you examples of what other communities have done.
So let's say an elected official in some town that has seen a surge in its immigrant population. I don't know what to do, or there are different challenges. I can turn to this toolkit and perhaps make some phone calls, network, find out some information.
Right, this is a starting point. You know, there's different topics: housing, education, community engagement. There are different chapters, and each chapter covers the challenges, the strategies, and then it gives an example of a best practice. So if a community, if an elected official wants to focus on housing, on civic engagement, then you look at that chapter, you look at the challenges that are outlined regionally, you look at the strategies that are provided, and then you look at a best practice of what another community has done, because it's good to have an example of what has worked, and then you just change it for your community.
That's I guess a good outline, and not necessarily a formula, but an outline you could probably follow and to guide you. You mentioned some of those areas where there are challenges where I think, the big growth has been in the Latino population. Can you talk about some of those challenges in detail, please?
So when we were going about our research, from the municipal perspective, the main challenges were lack of capacity and lack of funding. From the immigrant perspective, however, we found that many immigrants, they come to the United States from countries where becoming civically engaged to a certain level could lead to consequences, right? Negative consequences.
Negative consequences.
And so when they come to the U.S., they have that that previous understanding of government, and in addition to the federal policy that are faced here in the United States. And so one of the challenges is that mistrust in government, not understanding the laws, the policies, and also the language access barrier. Our Chicago Metropolitan region it's very diverse in terms of its foreign-born population. There's a number of languages that are being spoken in our communities. And so those are some of the main challenges that the toolkit highlights and across the various different chapters. So.
Okay, you want Diane?
Yeah, so the diversity that we're seeing in the Niles Township, though there is some increase in the Latino population, I believe it's over 90 languages are spoken in Skokie alone.
Yes. More than 90 languages.
More than 90 languages. So the benefit of the toolkit for a center like myself is not necessarily to see what everyone is doing in regards to all of the different communities that we see, but to at least get like a starting point. It's a jump-off point to see what are they doing in Palatine, what are they doing in Aurora, and then being able to take those practices, those strategies, and tailor them to the community that I serve, which is very diverse in itself. So even if some organizations are Latino-specific or Spanish-speaker-specific, it's good to just have an example and be able to take from that and tailor it to the differences that I see. As a service provider, I get to share with everybody what we are doing, but then I also get to see what everyone else is doing and be able to use some of that in the services we offer.
Right, well, give me an example of exactly how this looks on the ground now that since you are part of a service provider. Once you see that challenge, is like you have over 90 languages that are being spoken, how does that look in the day-to-day when you're dealing with folks and trying to help parents navigate this world?
Right. Well, one of the biggest issues that we see is the need for interpreters. So because of all of these different languages being spoken, we see that parents, for parent-teacher conferences, for different events and workshops, are not quite grasping what the schools are offering, so they're not able to take full advantage of what's being offered because of the language discrepancy. So, okay, how do I find interpreters for 90 languages? It's certainly not something I can do on my own, sort of a call out to the community. We want trained, certified interpreters. So in the toolkit, there's even a language on a section on language accessibility. So through that, I was able to find an organization. I partner with them. They train interpreters. We have this great collaboration where my center hosts the training, and then when they have to do their hours of service, their sort of internship, I'm able to utilize them to help fulfill some of the requests for interpreters. So just different ways, different ideas, different partners that I can find to help me with that need.
Do you ever work with parents directly yourself?
I do. So the center itself hosts a series of classes. We do 2 semesters like a university or a college. So in the fall, we usually offer about 12 classes per semester, and that's the fun part. I get to see parents come into the center every day for English classes, computers, citizenship preparation, parenting, anything that's going to help them strengthen their families.
Okay, so that is integration, you know, on the ground in a sense. Well, not in a sense, in actual work. And usually, how many people do you have in that center?
Every year we serve about maybe 400 parents, so about 250 unique parents come through the center every year for our classes.
Okay, well, that's one of the challenges as far as immigrant integration in language, and you mentioned the fact that there is sometimes the lack of capacity and resources for these municipalities. What are the certainly language is one of the overarching ones, but what are other challenges does this toolkit respond to that you've seen?
You know, I think civic engagement is
he did touch on
a significant component that really all of the chapters address one topic that impacts municipal government directly, from housing to civic engagement to language. They all directly impact municipalities, and we wanted it to be so that we can address either one by one or all at the same time. Addressing them all at the same time is a bit challenging,
right,
but
definitely.
Municipalities can look towards this guidebook and find topics that are of interest to them and their communities, that make sense for their communities. You said 90 languages, that's a lot. You know, we have schools with about 50 languages as well. It's a very diverse. Our population in Hanover Park, for example, we have the 6th fastest growing Asian immigrant community in the Chicago metropolitan area. So that's very significant for us. We want to engage people in our municipalities, and that would be one of our focus.
And how, Ricardo mentioned that some of these individuals or these groups come from countries where civic engagement poses challenges and sometimes life-threatening challenges for some of them. How do you navigate and bridge those difficulties, or what is CMAP recommended, and how has that looked when you work? First to you.
The recommendations that the toolkit offer are different. Provide different level recommendations. They're small scale, and there's also broader scale that are more step-by-step practical. And the civic engagement chapter talks about one of the challenges that we heard from local elected officials was that where do we start? How do we begin to identify a leader in the community from the immigrant community? And how do we begin to engage them so that through them we can access the broader community? And so one of the recommendations that the toolkit talks about, based on what other communities have done, is to begin by working directly with the churches, with the schools who provide access to that population, identify a leader, and begin by inviting them to serve on a commission. It could be a civic engagement commission, it could be ethnic commission, and eventually through that leader begin to identify others to develop broader groups. An example is the village of Addison. They have a certified emergency response team The municipality worked with the police department. They identify a leader in the community. They train him. He was able to become part of the CERT team, and eventually he was able to identify other members in the community and himself provide the training in Spanish, and the bilingual CERT team, it's now utilized for when there's major events like festivals or when there's traffic control in the community. So that's one example.
Okay. Well, you gave us an example. I do want to ask you how you see that in Hanover Park. How have you helped?
We actually have something very similar. We have a CERT team, and it started like that. I actually didn't know Addison had something like that, but we started, like Ricky said, we went to the church, and the church had some very big events, and we said, okay, let's train your volunteers, and the volunteers have received training, and now we have something that not only benefits the community and the church community, but it also benefits the community at large. Another example would be, we started in Hanover Park the Work and Education Center. We noticed that we wanted to see unemployment decline, and we wanted to prepare our residents for jobs, good jobs, head of household jobs. So our Work and Education Center is a collaboration between Harper Community College, the Elgin Community College, the Cook WorkNet Center, and the Village of Hanover Park, and we've all invested together. And I think that's going to be an example of what government does in the future. You have to collaborate together to reach a common goal. It's very difficult now in government to say we're going to invest alone in a big project. So this is a great example of collaborating with different agencies that saw a need and that saw that as taxpayers our residents weren't being properly served. So they put funds into building this center that will offer English as a second language classes, GED classes, but also computer classes, and then also funnel community members into the community colleges. So it's a great resource to take advantage. The WorkNet Center will work with people in training them, allocating resources for skills training, building resumes, job searching, those types of things.
Well, it sounds like they have everything they could desire at that center. And Diana, how have you seen that translate into leaders coming out of those classes and those citizenship classes? Tell me about that. I'm sure you've experienced a lot of that.
Yes, and so I think that's why these partnerships are super important, because I do have direct access to these parents, and I'm pushing them, right, to be, because we're school focused, the push is to be on the PTA, to be on the PTO, to really get involved and to realize that they do have the opportunity to be leaders in their children's schools, in their community, so to know sort of what programs are being done, and to know that there are leaders in those coming from the different classes and the different programs that we offer, to sort of know what the next step is. So maybe they're already on the parent-teacher organization. What else can they do to be more civically engaged? That's something that I would turn to a different organization to say, well, what have you done? Maybe I would look in the toolkit and see what other programs are being offered to really provide a ladder of opportunity. And maybe they start with me, and they start in their schools, and then really to take that sort of bigger and broader. We also have programs that are specifically designed to get parents involved and to become leaders in their schools, to put them in classrooms, to get a good understanding of their role in education. We know that many immigrants come from countries and cultures where parents don't have a place in their children's education. It's not seen as a partnership. Educating their children is not really seen as a partnership, so we definitely want to break that stigma down and get parents involved in their school, in their children's schools.
Well, that's awesome. We're getting close to the end here, and I'm curious as to the vision CMAP has going forward and how that translates at the municipal level and at the service level. Let's try to get that as briefly as possible.
So I think when we come to the U.S., we come for a better life, right? To provide our children with a good education, long range. To us, from the standpoint of a region agency, having a educated workforce leads to employment, to jobs locally, and in turn continues to make our region a strong global economic center. Being in a metropolitan planning organization where we receive a lot of transportation dollars, it's important to understand where the needs are so that we can connect jobs to where people live. So,
okay, that's awesome. Ada, what is your vision as far as this helping integrate immigrants as part of CMAP and the work that you do?
Well, I think my vision is to collaborate with other agencies and get other agencies like CMAP involved, other municipalities involved in the immigrant integration process. The immigrant community is a big part of the growth in our state. It's a big part of our economic engine in Hanover Park. Many of our businesses are started by immigrant communities. Our homes are purchased by immigrant communities. The children of immigrants, I myself am a child of immigrants. We are the future, and we need to prepare our future families to have positive impact in our communities, to have good head of household jobs, to become educated, to become integrated, and to really have a sense of place and belonging in our communities, because these are our homes. Este es nuestro hogar now. This is our home now.
Good. Well said. And finally, very briefly, Diana.
Yes, so every immigrant community is looking to better the situation for themselves and for their families, and it's important to see what has been working in other communities.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. We ran out of time with just so much to talk about.
Thank you.
thank you.
And to you, thank you for joining us. Perspectivas Latinas is a community service of CAN-TV. If your nonprofit organization would like to work with CAN-TV, call 312-738-1400 and ask for nonprofit services. Tune into Perspectivas Latinas for local issues and concerns every Thursday at 8:30 p.m. on CAN-TV 21. I'm Juan Carlos Hernandez. Thank you for joining us.